Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast, where we talk about life, death and experiences in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I trust that the conversations within this podcast will offer value, insight and information into what happens in the afterlife. To find out more about the free online community and extra content, be sure to click subscribe and to check out the links in the notes below. And now, let's get into today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Today's going to be slightly different. It's a solo episode, just me here chatting away in response to some emails that I've received and some questions which have really been weighing on me quite heavily in the last little while. Today's episode is where I'm going to talk all about reincarnation, about this concept, about what it is, what it means, how it might play out for different belief systems, I suppose, the way that we look at things. It is in response to an email that I received from Albert. So Albert, if you're listening, firstly, thank you so much for collating this information. Secondly, thank you so much for sending it through to me. It was done in such a way that it was all laid out very clearly. I didn't feel like I had to do any work, which was fabulous, but it's very precise and it comes at a really timely point in the way that I'm processing my thoughts. So Albert, thank you very much. You have actually prompted this entire episode, this entire conversation. Like I say, this has been on my heart for a while now, and I have been looking into these topics. So today I'm just going to share with you my thoughts, basically, what I've found out from looking into these topics. So the process of this episode started back when I was talking with Whitley Strieber. Now, Whitley's wife had a near-death experience. Her name was Anne. She had a near-death experience. And then the two of them, Whitley and Anne, made a pact that if one of them died, the other one would try to communicate with them once they had left this world. Now, it's a beautiful story. Go and have a listen to that. I just love the way that Whitley talks about his wife. It's a very beautiful relationship that they had. But what I found really interesting was as we progressed through our conversation, we did start to talk about the topic of reincarnation. And my mind just blew. I was really challenged by the question, I suppose, of if we do reincarnate, and so many near-death experiences have met past loved ones or people that have lived previously, seen previous lifetimes, had amazing things happen in their near-death experience. What happens to the soul if we reincarnate? Does it mean that we can no longer have that connection? Does it mean that nobody will see us in a near-death experience? Does it mean that our soul is now somebody else? And what happens if we're seeing past loved ones? Does that mean that they haven't yet reincarnated? So I started to ask all of these questions. Now, just backtracking a little bit further, my belief system hasn't been very open to, I guess, this whole concept of reincarnation. I have followed some very religious beliefs for quite some time. I'm talking probably these started to change about 9.5 years ago. There was a very significant event that happened for me there. But I didn't believe in reincarnation, not because I hadn't thought about it, not because I hadn't explored this to a little degree, but it was because I actually had just shut down the idea. I'd been trained that this wasn't a thing, reincarnation wasn't real, and I just blindly believed that. But I always had these little questions within me. I always had, but how does that work? How can that not work? How can it not be real? Now, the experience that I had was after my father was killed in an accident. Very traumatic time. He was my hero. I still just love him to bits. I believe he came back and he said to me, "I'm okay." Now, this transformed everything for me because my belief system up until that point meant that he wasn't okay. I had a very strong concept of heaven and hell and that we had to believe a certain way. Various things were going on for me. So to have this experience where I felt like my father came and said to me, "I'm okay," blew my mind, blew my world, and really started me to question a lot of stuff that I previously believed. And I previously believed all of these other things because of my near-death experience, because I'd had this experience and then I thought, I've got to get around people who believe the same thing. It was a trying to connect to my experience whilst I was here back in the body. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, but bear with me. I'm going to do my very, very best. Bear with me. So anyway, I felt like my father came. He said he was okay. My beliefs were challenged greatly in that moment. And I allowed myself to start to question. Now, you might have heard me say in some of the episodes that I've done that we must question everything, that I think it's really, really important. And I stand by this today 100%. I think if we can't question things, something's really wrong, because why can't we question it? We can't just blindly believe, or we can't read something and trust that that is truth. We have to question and ask for our own personal understanding and experiences for everything. I know that's going to hit on a nerve with a few people. I'm not the only one who has been through this type of scenario. So what I'm sharing with you today, can I just put this out there, that there are many, many beliefs around reincarnation. There are many theories, many concepts. Nothing can be proven, just like we struggle to prove a near-death experience happened. A lot of spiritually transformative experiences, we can't prove that they've happened. So today I'm sharing with you the things that are on my heart. I'm not saying this is how it is, but what I do ask is that you would question everything, that you would do the research yourself, look into what resonates with you and feels good with you. Because like I've said in other episodes as well, is that we're all at a different place in our spiritual growth. And if something doesn't resonate with you, then that's okay. Just like 10 years ago, the concept of reincarnation did not resonate with me. And that was okay, because I was at a very, very different place within my spiritual walk, within my spiritual growth, within understanding what I hope that I understand correctly now. So anyway, moving along. So I'm going to talk about reincarnation. Firstly, the concept of reincarnation. What is it? It is the belief that the soul would return back to a body after death. So there are different beliefs. Like I say, this is a very, very big conversation. Some people will believe that it will come back to a human body, that we stay within our human evolution, that we would live out a lifetime, die, the spirit would stay alive, I guess, because the spirit doesn't really die in this concept. It would then come back into another body, whether that's another human, whether it would be a baby, or, you know, it would just keep being reborn into another body. There is a belief that we stay only in a human realm. There's beliefs that we might transition, maybe would be an animal at another point, we might be a plant at another point in time, that there are different experiences that happen. I've heard someone say to me once that they believe that the life of a domestic cat, for example, might be a recovery lifetime. It might be one where the previous lifetime or lifetimes have been very full on, very energy consuming, I'll say, where the person has done a lot in that lifetime, or I say person, but it could have been anything. And so to get a lifetime where pretty much all you do is lie around the house and sleep and eat and everything's provided for you, that might be seen as a lifetime of rest. Now, I don't know, but if I'm going to come back, I would like to come back as a cat, because I love cats. And I'd like to come back as, well, my cat, because my cat is so loved. I know that doesn't work because, well, maybe it does. That's another question. Could you come back as your own cat that you're looking after? Anyway, I digress, because that will send me off into a whole nother rabbit hole that I don't need to go down right now. So the concept that we keep coming back. So why would we keep coming back? Well, what I think is that there are, from what I can tell, there's beliefs that we would come back to rebalance karma. So where maybe we've had a really hard lifetime, the next lifetime might be quite an easy one, where if we've been in a soul group, and I have talked about soul groups in previous episodes about how potentially we might come back and we're all part of one group, just like the actors in a theatre play. We've all got different roles and we all experience those different roles within different lifetimes together. So we get that full experience of that soul group. So we might come back because we need to rebalance the karma within relationships within our soul group. or relationships with and things that have happened in our life. There is a big belief that we come back to learn and to grow and to expand, I guess, the evolution of the soul, evolution of consciousness. Some people talk about how we might come back because we need to get more connected to God or to source, or whatever name you want to put on that higher being, that higher power, because at the end of the day, a lot of it is about love and growth. And so some believe that we come back because we need to grow to become more embodied with the higher power, to become more connected to that one, the idea that we'd all become one at the end. There's a lot of ideas which I've talked about within the episodes, how we are one, how we are connected all the time, whether we're at the beginning of our spiritual walk or later on down the journey, we are connected by love. We are connected within the spiritual realm. So some people believe we come back to play out karma, to rebalance karma, things that have happened. People believe that we come back for a growth experience. Others believe that we come back purely to connect and to be love, to share love, to spread love, to enhance the amount of love in this lifetime. And there are many, many questions which open up around that. Again, why do some people not act in a loving behavior? Why do people live harsh lifetimes? Why do some people have harder journeys than others? There's a lot of questions that are on the sidelines of what I'm talking about here. But it seems to be that most people believe that reincarnation happens so we can be here and we can be fully absorbed in this experience, have a very physical experience, and to grow through that experience. Now, not everyone believes that we are always here in this earthly realm, having our experience here, where I've said we might be a human, we might be an animal, we might be a plant. I believe even objects. You could be an object. I remember one near-death experiencer talking to me about a life review that she had. And she had been within the life review, she went back to a point in her life where she wasn't very nice to someone, and she picked up a stick and she hit a dog with a stick. And she had her life review and she remembered everything, and she re-experienced this moment in full, I guess, every element that was available. She relived this moment to the full of what it was like to be back there feeling so angry and picking up the stick to hit the dog. She also experienced at the same time, so trust me, life reviews are never quite straightforward. A lot of our conversation topics aren't straightforward. They don't necessarily make logical sense here. At the same time, she experienced what it was like to be the dog being hit by the stick, and the pain and just the feeling of the dog. What I find really interesting is then she went on to say, but I also experienced what it was like to be the stick, to be picked up and to be smacked against the dog. And that blew my mind, because we think of sticks and, leaves that have fallen off trees, things like that. We think of objects which quite possibly you wouldn't think that they have a life or a spirit or any purpose in any way. Maybe they do. So we come back either in a human form, might be an animal, might be a plant, might be anything that's living basically, but it could be some of these other items that aren't necessarily living. And I know that this is going to open up more conversation. This blows my mind right now as I'm talking to you, but we're not going to process that quite yet, because the idea is that we come back and we have a physical experience. So you may know, if you've been listening to my episodes, I am all about this physical experience. Yes, I'm about connecting to spirit, connecting, being aligned with purpose, understanding the spiritual picture, and trying to live the best, most loving life that we can. But there's also a reason that we're here in our physical body. And so if we're here in our physical body, we're having this physical experience, I think we actually need to connect to that on some element. We need to really embrace that in some ways. And when we're here having this physical experience, we are still a spirit or a soul, or however you want to word that. We are a consciousness. We are something that is more than our physical body. Outside of our physical body, there is no gender, there's no race, there's no hierarchy. We are just all completely equal, is my belief, that we are just of spirit. We are just of what we are when we're not within this body. So when we come back into another body, who knows what's going on there. Now, I talked about Whitley Strieber, about how the conversation with him that led to reincarnation really got my mind thinking about what happens when we do reincarnate. Can we no longer be one of the past loved ones that people see in their experiences, or you hear about after-death communication? Is the communication then completely stopped because that soul or that spirit then goes and has another incarnation somewhere else? Bud McGargy totally challenged my thinking on this when he talked about the octopus. He talked about the 8 tentacles, or however many tentacles there might be. So we think of octopus. I don't think we're limited to 8 when we're talking about souls. I think that perhaps we can be having different incarnations all at the same time, but it's like a different tentacle is in a different incarnation. So much that we could talk about on there. But if you're listening, I thank you for that conversation, because you have challenged me greatly. I've had listeners writing into me. I've had conversation going on in different groups where that point alone has really triggered something. And I believe that that was the reason that Albert actually emailed me in the first place. So I've just given you a quick rundown on the basics of reincarnation. It's the concept that we keep coming back. There is no gender, there's no hierarchy, there's no race. We are just spiritual beings having a physical experience. We've talked about some of the reasons why we might come back. So being the evolution of the soul, being balancing karma, just to have this physical experience for true growth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to flick over to Albert's email, because he has collated some amazing information. I am going to read this. So if you're watching the video version, please just ignore the fact that my eyes are going across the screen, but I want to get this right. I don't want it to be just me trying to remember what Albert's written to me, because there's a lot in here and it's very, very interesting. So as I do this, I'm taking a little pause here as well. I just want to remind you that if you are not aware, there is a VIP subscriber group. This group gets extra content. They get behind the scenes content with the guests that come on. They get live VIP sessions. So that might be, we do a spotlight with some of the members. It might be a live chat where we have discussions around certain topics. They get early access to the episodes with no ads in them. So ad-free early access. They get a discount on other services that I offer. I also do coaching. I do life coaching. I do death coaching. Not a term that many people have heard of. If you're wondering what a death coach is, I look at my role as somebody who's embracing the concept of death. So it may be somebody who's been given a terminal diagnosis. How do I understand that? How do I cope with that? What's some of the things I need to talk through? How do I concentrate on living when all of my life has been turned to this concept of I'm actually about to die? Or maybe somebody who's got a family member who's got a terminal diagnosis. I am all about the conversation of death. So I do life coaching, death coaching. There's Akashic readings. I do some of those. There are many other things that are going on in the background, and all the VIPs and the supporter group get a discount on those services. If you want to know more, you can go over to letstalkneardeath.com. There's an online community there. And also, if you would like to receive any updates, you can send me your email address or go to the Facebook page. There is a little link there where you can subscribe for updates. This is to get my weekly newsletter, which lets you know of anything that's coming up or the live sessions that are coming up. It also goes through the current episode, which has just been released, and lets you know each week what's been released and where you could find that. So anyway, just a little plug there. Thank you. I hope that you're all still listening after that. I'm now back over at Albert's email. So Albert pulled together, he collated a whole lot of information around this topic of reincarnation. He's got snippets from all over the place of what some near-death experiences have seen within their experiences, what prompts some people to actually believe that reincarnation is real. And like I say, we can't prove anything. So it's really interesting. So the first one that I want to start with is one from near-death experiencer Ron Kruger. Now he wrote, directly in front of me, but slightly below, stood a group of spirits. Less than 100, but more than 50. Each spirit had an identity of sorts, but they were all part of each other, a single entity, a single awareness, all part of a single force. In the center of the front row, there were 3 Oriental women. I realized that all of the spirits comprising the entity were my past lives, and the Oriental women were my most recent lives. Their faces were clearly humanoid, but from their shoulders down, their forms blurred gradually. Their arms and legs dissolved near the ends. Hovering on the same level in rows, they seemed loosely joined at the shoulders. Their identities of both sexes and all nationalities. None of them were deceased relatives, and I recognized none of them from my recent life. Each of the spirits had lived once, but the truth and experience and wisdom of each lifetime was integral to the entire group. When each soul returned, their lives were absorbed by all, so there were no distinctions between thoughts and attitudes within the group. Each of them shared completely every experience and every knowledge of every lifetime into a single conscience. Like spices and other ingredients added to a mulligan stew, each added to the mix, but the resulting flavor was one. I was them, they were me. They were my past and they were my present. They communicated with me as one, not with words, but as a kind of telepathy. Every thought, whether it was a simple emotion or volumes of information, came packaged with instant and complete understanding. No message could suffer misinterpretation, no problems of syntax or variance of intelligence. So that was from Ron Kruger. That has been picked up, I believe, from the NDERF site, nderf.org. So absolutely amazing to think that he was there in his near-death experience. He was suddenly surrounded by all of these souls, that each one was part of him. He was connected to them. They were all a lifetime that had been lived. So that makes me think of that octopus analogy that Bud talked about. Perhaps it was the octopus with the head, and then there were 50 tentacles going out, or however many. He says less than 100, but more than 50. So absolutely amazing. So that talks about how potentially we have come and lived different lifetimes, and you hear a lot of people within their near-death experiences talking about how they see past loved ones. They see other beings. Some of them they don't recognize, but they know that they're connected to in some way. This could explain that. Okay, moving on in this email, we have got something from, where are we? I'm going to jump down. PMH Atwater. Now, many of us are familiar with her. She has her book, We Live Forever, and this is taken from page 37, where she says, I saw what resides within our earthly frame. What we think defines us as human beings is but a figure of what we are, a projection from our soul's mass. Very interesting. Near-death experiencer Christian Andreasen, what I observed in the realm went way beyond what I would have originally thought reincarnation would be. Reincarnation, I learned, is about birthing new energy from our original energy. We take on a new lifetime. This happens by us merging new energy, gifted to us by God, with bits and pieces of our older energy mixed all together. Heaven then helps us to fit into a new space, in this case, a physical body, so that we might explore new ideas or feelings that will require additional soul searching and or experience. If there's any part of our core self that causes us to hold serious questions about ourselves and our abilities, you can bet your bottom dollar that we will incarnate again until we are satisfied with the answers that we eventually find. So that's talking about that reason why we might reincarnate is to keep coming back and have learning experiences. So often people say that the one thing that they struggle with in a lifetime is the thing that they're here to master or to learn or to go through. So I spend quite a bit of time focusing or asking myself, what am I afraid of? What is the thing that scares me? And then quite often I go and pursue the things that scare me, because I think that that's a really good indication as to what we might be here to, I guess, overcome in this lifetime. So I would say, go and have a little look at that. Ask yourself some questions. What am I afraid of? What is the thing that is holding me back? The other question that I love to ask is that if I was fully aligned with my soul's purpose for my life at this point, what would I do differently? What would I do more of? What would I do less of? What would I do differently if I was completely aligned to what I think I'm meant to be doing with my life? Just throwing that in there because I think that's a very important part of the question. Now, looking through here, gosh, there are so many. Albert, you did such a good job to collate all of these. Robert Munro's book, Ultimate Journey. This is from page 166. And he's asking himself, he's talking about himself as Robert, and then there's the Robert I there. So I guess that's his internal self, his higher self. He's asking questions to his soul. So Robert, how far back does the soul's history go? Robert I there is, Robert's I there. Before you were born. Robert, you had better tell me because I don't remember. Robert I there. You wouldn't because you didn't exist. We made the decision to become human again. We selected the time and the place and organized the DNA mix, elements from the physical and elements from us. We took these parts of us that seemed most appropriate. We rolled them all up into one and we sent them in. There you and we were. Robert asks, what exactly did you send in? And Robert I there says personalities, memories, what else? I find this interesting because there's always a level of amnesia when we come into this lifetime. And I think it's difficult to not ask why we can't remember things. If we believe that there are past lives, if we believe in this concept of reincarnation, how come we can't remember things? I get asked this quite a bit, actually. I would say the answer is probably something to do with needing to be here to have this full physical experience. Because if we can remember everything that's happened before us, then we can't be fully present in this experience. When I think about this, I think it's a little bit like going to the movies. If you have seen the movie before, it's a very different experience to when you're seeing it for the very first time. And you can imagine if you see the movie over and over and over again, it starts to get a bit more familiar because you start to understand what's happening in that. I'm not saying that that's what's happening in our lives, is that we're living the same life over and over and over again and getting familiar with it, because each time we come back, we have this amnesia. But if we are here and we can't remember anything, then we are truly present and having this physical experience. I think when we come in with history or memories, or if we're in our soul group and we are here all playing out a different role within this play, then if we have the memory of what it's like to be the other person in the soul group, that's going to taint the experience that we have here. So I think the reason that we can't remember things is because we need to be very present in this experience that we're having. We need to have it fully, and that it needs to be untainted, I guess, completely fresh. That's my perspective. Okay, moving on down this. I hope you're still with me. There's quite a lot of reading here that I'm doing. We have got near-death experiencer Thomas Sawyer wrote this. Reincarnation is not a linear thing. One of the problems in defining it is that there is no analogy to it. It is outside of time, yet we can't help but think of it in terms of the past and the future. And this is incarnation. The whole story is so big and so involved. Reincarnation is an opportunity to reach a goal. A goal is a true self-realization. Self-realization is to know that you are a soul, a part of God, yet also the whole. Perhaps no one has a good image at all of his or her soul, the whole self, and they have no idea of what proportion of their personality is in a relationship to their soul. As an example, a characteristic of your personality is 1% of all your personality characteristics put together. And all of your personality characteristics make up your personality, and your personality is only about 5% of your soul. Then we are binding ourselves to 95% of the rest of our soul in order to reincarnate. Reincarnation is an opportunity to evolve through many personalities. The definition of reincarnation is that your personality is who you are in your current lifetime, and that it can be reincarnated as an entirely different personality with the characteristics of the previous personality and previous personalities, including characteristics of another soul altogether. That is, characteristics at your present personality may be the reincarnation of other characteristics of personalities from your previous lifetimes, as well as characteristics from personalities from other souls. Wow, that's pretty interesting. So I love how he starts off by saying that reincarnation is not a linear thing. brings me back to what I was just saying about my cat. Potentially we can be living out different lifetimes. I think this came up with conversation with Bud about the octopus. We could be living out all sorts of different lifetimes all at the same time. I know Dr. Yvonne Cason talked about how she believes that she once met another reincarnation of herself in this lifetime. So it gets to be a really confusing and big conversation there, but it is quite possible that our different lifetimes are being played out, not in a linear way, not in a chronological order. It could be little bits happening all over the place, which is where we could be experiencing different things at different times. There's the whole other topic about whether we might reincarnate in different places. People talk about different planets, different systems, about different stars and galaxies and all sorts of things there. I'm not going to go down that pathway. I want you to go down that pathway yourself. Have another look at what you think might be out there. Do some research of your own. Man, there is so much in there. I haven't even read the full email. I feel like my mind is getting a little bit jumbled now. So I don't want to spread information which potentially isn't quite correct. Again, Albert, thank you for that. That has been amazing. One point that I do want to put in there is that I don't think we come into this lifetime with more than what we can handle. I don't know why some people have harder lifetimes than others. There is a view that perhaps we have a sped up learning process. The more we go through, the harder that a lifetime might be. Then the more we learn, the more we achieve in a lifetime. Whether that means we can go and rest for a lifetime, I don't know. But I don't think we come into this life with more than we can handle. I think it's always within what we can cope with. And I know that that is a very difficult thing for some people to hear. I don't know why it works out the way that it does. I do believe that we should live life right to the very end moments. There are consequences, I think, that will be accepted greatly. Also, another listener, Lizette, we've been having some very interesting conversation around this topic at the moment. I think that anyone who potentially commits suicide or ends their life for whatever reason, I think will be welcomed into the light, won't be judged in such a way. But I do think that there's consequences for that. I think about the life review. I think about the people left behind, that they would experience that trauma, that emotion. I think that potentially we have to go through that again. So now I'm starting to get into some real controversial topics. I would just say again, I don't think that we come into this lifetime with more that we can handle. And I think we should live this life out right to the very end. And that can be scary because it means that we aren't in control of when this life might finish. So we've touched on some pretty big topics today. I hope that this has been interesting. I hope that this has been useful. It's certainly got my mind thinking, perhaps a little bit too much, but that's okay. So again, thank you for joining us here. Thank you for tuning in. If you would like to know more about becoming a VIP, please do let me know. You can always email me, kirsty@letstalkneardeath.com. You can send me an email there if you wish to become a subscriber or if you wish to sign up for the weekly email newsletter that comes out. Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're up to, whatever is going on in your life, I send you love. I send you light. I trust that things will go well for you, and I wish you the absolute best as you go about your week, wherever you are, at whatever point you are listening to this episode. Much love to you all, and I will catch you again in our next episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast.